My name is Paul Luna, and you're tuned into F&B Lunacy. I am here today with founder, podcast host of Chefs Without Restaurant, Chef Chris Spear.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good, and you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Chef, talk to us about Chef Without Restaurants.
Yeah.
How did it come about?
So I'm a personal chef now. I started my business about 10 years ago on the side while I was working somewhere else. And now I've been doing it for 5 years full time. And I just found that as I started to get successful, more people wanted me to tell my story about how I did it. And then they also wanted advice. Like people would come to me and say, I want to leave my restaurant job. How do you do it? And there's only so many meetings you can have one-on-one with people and kind of, explain things. That's very time consuming. And then at the same time, I found that I was starting to get more requests than I had time to fulfill for customers. And I wanted to find a way to share gigs. So I just thought, why don't we start this little thing on the internet where we can share best practices, resources, and job opportunities. And we'll call it Chefs Without Restaurants. I didn't want to limit it just to personal chefs or caterers or even food truck operators. I've literally never worked in a restaurant. I've been in the food world 25 years, but I've worked in corporate food, contract food. I've worked for IKEA. I've worked in hospitals. And I just wanted to kind of create an environment for everyone who was not working in a restaurant to kind of come together, commiserate, share experience, and help each other out. And I thought it was going to be like 4 people that I personally knew. And now 3 years later, we have like 4,000 Instagram followers and people all over the world. And I have this podcast and I've released over 80 episodes where I talk to people doing, interesting things in the food world besides restaurant cooking.
Chef, are you a breast or a legs man?
Definitely legs. I shouldn't say definitely. I love it all.
Is there a food related product you eat that is embarrassing?
No, I think you should embrace everything. I mean, I love Cheez-Its. I know a lot of people are anti junk food or processed food, and I could eat a whole box in one sitting, but no, I should embrace whatever you love eating.
What was your first job?
I worked at Burger King, and they didn't even put me in the kitchen. They put me on the cash register. I thought I was going to really get some cooking experience, but at 16, they didn't really want a bunch of 16-year-olds in the kitchen.
Was there a lot of cooking involved?
I mean, no, not really. But, you learn how to work a flat top and a broiler and a fryer. I mean, that's a start. So, after I was there a little while, they gave me a turn at it. But, it was really hard. No restaurants want to really hire teenagers. I think teenagers get a rap for being lazy. And I just wanted to start working in the food world. But I didn't really even get a crack at cooking for a while.
What type of music do you enjoy listening to when you're not at work?
Oh, I love everything kind of in the rock and roll spectrum. I'm a big fan of like punk, post-punk, 80s kind of throwback stuff, some industrial metal, but I can also get down with like the acoustic guitar kind of stuff. I'm just not really into modern hip hop or country.
Do you sing when you're in the shower?
No. I don't really sing at all. Maybe if the music's on in the kitchen, but yeah, no singing in the shower.
Do you listen to any podcasts in the show?
I actually have. I love the Tim Ferriss show, and that show's almost 3 hours long. And I find if I'm not listening to it everywhere I go, I'm just not going to get through an episode. So sometimes I have to take it into the bathroom with me.
Is there a condiment that you could not live without?
Yeah, ketchup, but it has to be Heinz. There's no reason. I don't know why anyone else makes any other kinds of ketchup. It's the only kind. I don't even want any of this house-made fancy restaurant stuff. Just give me Heinz ketchup.
Why did you become a chef?
Because I love food. I was a little overweight kid who just liked to eat all the time. And, I found myself in the kitchen. My mom liked to cook a lot, and I like to eat and kind of play around in there. And I think I'm a creative person. So that was a good way for me to get into something.
Who was your inspiration?
Culinarily, when I was well, I don't want to say young, but like a teenager, I guess like Emerald, because he went to the same culinary school I did. He actually lived in Massachusetts where I did. And at a time where he was literally like the only person on Food Network at the time, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. This guy who lives in my state went to this school that I'm going to go to. And so I was really kind of into Cajun and Creole cooking when I was like 17 to 19 years old.
What do you enjoy doing when you're not working?
Anything art related, but really photography. I've always had cameras growing up, even if they were the kind of cheap disposable ones. So I'm always out taking photos, and not just food photos, but just things that are really interesting. I especially love like city and urban kind of environments.
Fill in the blank. Cooking is?
Love.
What's important, taste or food presentation?
Taste for sure. I think the whole you eat with your eyes thing is overrated.
I can't understand it myself.
Yeah, it's really hard. I make a lot of food that I think is delicious, but I take a photo, or sometimes my customers take a photo and I'm like, oh, like if they post that on the internet, it looks like garbage, but I know it's delicious and I know they think it's delicious.
And I understand the eating with your eyes first, but the eyes don't have the mouth that absorb taste and flavor.
Yeah, and I think it's led to the rise of these dishes that have 17 components on them and a bunch of micro herbs that don't taste like anything but cost $40 a pound, and all these things that come along with it.
What do you think of those incredible microherbs?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're okay, but I think they're overrated. And, herbs are great, but, you can buy a bunch of dill for $1.99 as opposed to like, this micro cress that's like $35 for a little tiny container. And they, are super perishable.
What does playing with yourself mean to you?
Oh, geez. Yeah. I mean, I think if you're talking about in the food context, it's just like me kind of hanging out in the kitchen doing my own thing without people bothering me and letting it get a little weird.
Is there anything you would like to say to us that is meaningful to you?
I think, if you have something that you love, you should just go out and do it. I think a lot of people are afraid of what other people think. And if there's something you want to do, just like life is short, go get it.
This is not an off-the-wall question like all the other ones. Would you consider yourself a lunatic, Chef Chris Spears?
No, not really. I mean, I have some really crazy food ideas, but I think I'm pretty composed. Like I'm not one of those crazy chefs who like yells and screams. I think of that as being kind of a lunatic, but I do think my mind goes to weird places when I'm creating dishes and food, and the food can be a little off the wall. You just have to be open to doing things. The podcast wasn't anything I thought about either. It was like literally there's a guy in my town who has a food truck, and he's one of these guys who sat down with me and wanted to know how to start being a personal chef and seeing if he could do his food truck food in people's homes. And then he started helping me on jobs. And one night we were just coming home from a gig, and he said, "Why aren't you doing a podcast?" And it's like, what do you mean? Like, I don't know anything. Like, I'm a chef. I barely know how to do marketing and food photography. Like, I don't know anything about podcasting. He's like, it's easy. You can watch some YouTube videos. Like, I'll do it with you. I'll be your co-host. And we didn't know anything about it. And he's no longer with me as far as a co-host, but he kind of started this thing. And I just, it wasn't anything I ever thought about, but now building a community and just seeing how the tone of the show is changing as well. Like the show used to be a very much like how to do this. Like, I want to start a food truck. So, I have a guy on who talks about how to start a food truck, and now it's more storytelling. And I really like that. Not that I don't want it to be a how-to show, but I released an episode today, and it's with this guy, Von Tan, who wrote a book called The Uncertainty Mindset. And it talks about, embracing uncertainty. And he's worked with big teams like even like Google and stuff about how to build better teams that are more resilient. And obviously there's a lot of pandemic talk, but it's not like a how to do X kind of show, which I think is really interesting. And it opens the door to have different guests on.